stuff, and if you do that shit over here in America, we'll do the same thing here. And that's the reason why it is so much control of the union between the black man and the Mexican. They make sure they do everything they can to keep our asses fighting each other all the time, because truth get told and the secret get told. The white man knows how he came over here and raped the black man over here and created that race of people from the mixture of his blood being mixed with the melanated man that he claimed is such an animal and so below him, but he couldn't keep his phallus from forcing his way up into all the melanated women and some young melanated boys that he funked over here when he brought his ass here.
To reach the United States,
to the Americans.
A member of the American Eugenics Society named Walter Ashby Plecker wrote a letter to the German Bureau of Human Betterment and Eugenics, praising them for the action and expressing his hope that not one child had been missed. 10 years earlier, Plecker had written that the black population was the greatest problem and most destructive force which confronts the white race and American civilization.
Told you. Threat to the white man.
Eugenics goals are most likely
he knows that that's genetic annihilation on his ass.
Frederick Osborne, President and founding member of the American Eugenics Society.
By the late 1930s and early 1940s, revelations about Nazi and fascist atrocities in Europe were causing the public to become increasingly uncomfortable with terms like eugenics and population control. This alarmed the leaders of the American Birth Control League, who were aware that this shifting attitude could impact both their ability to implement their racial agenda and their ability to raise funds. They were also aware that the connections between the American Birth Control League and the Nazis were starting to become known. Marketing research had shown them that in this environment, they needed to move away from words like control in favor of less threatening words like planning. So in 1942, they changed the name of the organization. From then on, the American Birth Control League would officially be known as Planned Parenthood.
Okay, it's getting ready to get good now. Now I'm warning you guys, if you are a real serious person that thinks that children are a very beautiful thing and should be valued and treated of high things to be concerned over type of commodity, if you really believe in your heart that God doesn't like ugly, after you see this right here, unless you is a real bigot that don't have a problem with certain colored children being mistreated, if you're one of those persons right like that, you might find this very, very enjoyable. But if you are a genuine God-loving person, that means that you know that little children are God. It's about to get real disturbing to you, I'm telling you right now. Alright, that's the only thing I'm going to tell you. You've been warned. Here we go.
The important thing to understand here is that this name change did not change the organization's agenda. The same people were still in control, they were still obsessed with race, and they were still dedicated to eugenics. Today, defenders of Margaret Sanger will often try to hide her racism by claiming that she was not really a eugenicist, and that Planned Parenthood was never part of the eugenics movement. But the truth is that as late as 1956, the American Eugenics Society listed Sanger as a member of the organization. In addition, many of Sanger's colleagues and the people whose writings she published, as well as many of Planned Parenthood's officers, were also known to be members.
In fact, the ties between Sanger and the eugenics movement were so well established that in the 1920s, Sanger pursued a plan to merge the American Birth Control League, or Planned Parenthood as it was later called, with the American Eugenics Society. However, despite Sanger's efforts, the merger plan died after being rejected by the leadership of the American Eugenics Society. As an alternative, Sanger then proposed that the two organizations at least combine their publications into one magazine. But again, that idea was also rejected by the American Eugenics Society.
The eugenic and civilization value of birth control is becoming apparent to the enlightened and the intelligent. The campaign for birth control is not merely of eugenic value, but is practically identical in ideal with the final aim of eugenics. Margaret Sanger, 1921.
In her autobiography, Margaret Sanger wrote about a speech she gave in 1926 at a Ku Klux Klan rally in Silver Lake, New Jersey. The Planned Parenthood founder bragged about the fact that afterward, she was invited by 12 other Klan chapters to speak at their events.
At about the same time the American Birth Control League was changing its name to Planned Parenthood, a lot of books and reports began coming out that attempted to put a happy face on eugenics. And many of them were written by people that were associated with Planned Parenthood. The strategy here was obvious. Since the Nazis had turned eugenics into a four-letter word, the American eugenics movement decided it was time to lay low. So most of their writings during this time period downplayed the role of eugenics and couched their agenda in terms of helping the African American. Perhaps the best example of this is a 1,500-page book by eugenicist Gunnar Myrdal called An American Dilemma, The Negro Problem in Modern Democracy. Interestingly, this book was not the result of some mom-and-pop operation. Myrdal had 75 assistants working on this project whose salaries were being paid for by the Carnegie Corporation. And Carnegie had been a major player in the eugenics movement for many years.
Gunnar Myrdal and his wife Alva.
Okay, Carnegie. That makes me think of Carnegie Hall, all right? So now I think about all the power that these people have, you know, because I mean the wealth is astronomical. It's just ridiculous to know that these people have become this wealthy, because you could go back all through history, like I said, and see how they have done nothing all over the planet but murdered us melanated people and stolen all our wealth, all our knowledge, everything from us, and just destroyed us as a welcoming human family on the earth. You know, we was like opened up our heart to, you know, and it just got fucked all over, you know. And then the fact that even to this day these people are still around. They've done so much stuff that now these same people they're talking about that made this Planned Parenthood, where they've murdered over 500,000 babies, blacks, Latinos, as well as white. But the whites doesn't even make a large percent. I think it's something like 8% of white aborted babies. But I'm saying to you that these are the people who's created circumstances on the planet where they have young women, some of them even married because they went out and got pregnant outside of their marriage vows. And these people open up building institutes here in America. I mean, they're everywhere, where they are, with permission, murdering these fetuses, ripping them out of the wombs of these women. And let me tell you something, this is murder. I don't care how you look at it. And it's only because even if a woman got raped and was having a baby that she didn't want to carry, if she aborted that baby, it still does not make it any less than her aborting that baby, regardless to what the motivating factor is. It's still murder. If it's a heartbeat there and you know that it needs to be eradicated because there's something about it that's going to interfere with something or cause an uncomfortable reaction in your life, then it's because it was a living entity. Otherwise, it would have been a problem. And the fact that you dealt with that by killing this life does not change it from being what it was, because it hadn't came out and started talking and moving around yet. It was still at that stage of not being fully developed enough to register life. That's the reason why you knew there was something that if you did not interrupt it, later it would be walking and talking. So you don't get away with murder, and that's just all to it. Murder is murder. And so now we have a country that's already got the bad karma of slavery, abuse of women, land theft, government murder, all kind of atrocious shit. And then along with that, you want to go and throw in all these abortions, and then throw in the removal of all these women uteruses on the planet. And okay, and then you see those spaceships sitting up at the sun, pointing the fucking laser at your ass, and me running around here telling you all this stuff, and then I'm the one that's crazy, right? Okay.
Were both involved in eugenics. They were funded by both the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation. They were also closely linked to a Swedish eugenics program which forcibly sterilized 66,000 people. When you read chapter 7 of this book, it becomes undeniable that this is a blueprint for the modern eugenics movement that we still see in the United States today. The bottom line is that Gunnar Myrdal believed that not only could blacks not help themselves, he felt that nobody could help them, and the only solution in his eyes was to get rid of them.
Commonly, it is considered a great misfortune for America that Negro slaves were ever imported. The presence of Negroes in America today is usually considered a plight of the nation. Chapter 7, page 166. All white Americans agree that if the Negro is to be eliminated, he must be eliminated slowly, so as not to hurt any living individual Negroes. Chapter 7, page 168. The only way possible of decreasing Negro population is by means of controlling fertility. Chapter 7, page 107. Birth control facilities could be extended relatively more to Negroes than to whites, since Negroes are more concentrated in the lower income and education classes. Chapter 7, page 176.
One thing I find very revealing about chapter 7 is the first paragraph. Myrdal uses U.S. Census Bureau figures to show that between 1790 and 1940, the black population in the United States increased 17 times. At the same time, those Census Bureau figures show that the white population increased 37 times. However, neither Myrdal nor any other eugenicist wrote anything about what to do about that part of the population that was increasing twice as fast as the black population.
Gunnar Myrdal's book on how to resolve what he called the Negro problem was published in 1944 by Harper & Brothers in New York. 4 years earlier, the same company, which is today known as HarperCollins, had also published a book by one of the founding members of the American Eugenics Society. At the time that Harper & Brothers published these books, its president was a man named Cass Canfield, who would later become the national president of Planned Parenthood.
We hope that the restraint of population growth can come about through voluntary means, but if it does not, involuntary methods will be used. Dr. Donald Winkler, 1972.
Donald.
See, involuntary method is all these prisons, okay? They always lie on black men and falsely lock us up in their prisons, okay? So that's another thing that America owes for. There's another reason why Quasar sitting his ass up there on the moon, on the sun with that. Oh, there's other people too you guys don't know about. But anyway, the reason he's up there on the sun with that thumper is because all these people that's been making a living off of falsely incarcerating these black men and these young children, these black women, these white girls, all over the planet making a killing, they all is going to be, I ain't even going to say it, but what I'm trying to say to everybody is this. I'm showing you the stuff right now to show you the bad karma that has been built up all around this planet. America is not the only person solely responsible for these type of activities. This type of activity has been spread all over the planet, and these ideals of income, monetary gain through coercion, and all these atrocious acts of racketeering and extortion and rape, prostitution, murder, all this stuff is money laundering. All of it is only about European ideal of fuck morality, let's all get paid, okay? Because listen, this is ridiculously accustomed and synonymous with being trademark of European people. They have taught the whole world to mimic them as far as not having no type of class about what you would do to sustain wealth, okay? Now, this is why the world is in the condition that it is. It ain't got nothing to do with us black people. They want you to believe that because they want to go around the world, treat us bad, murder us, and do everything that they need to do so they could utilize our women and keep our women pregnant, making more children bastardized because the father's not around, or either when the father is around, they got the women head fucked up to make her believe that pushing him out of the picture is the best thing for her, you know, to do. And all this foolishness is the reason why we have a whole planet full of dumbass children that don't know shit but how to play video games and get high and do stupid shit like can't wait till they get old enough to drink alcohol and all the dumb shit that's accustomed with a government that want everybody to be dumb as hell so they can be controlled, okay? And then eugenics is another way of controlling them because you can talk them into having abortions, and then you set up all your little more abortion centers. You know, you can go get an abortion, but your ass cannot go and get treatment in the hospital. You know, they ain't gonna ask you, do you have insurance and all that when you want an abortion. That shit's gonna be all paid for by public donation. I'm gonna just let you guys see it. I know you're getting tired of me talking, but I want to express things that they won't point out to you, so you could get a summary of it. I'd like to summarize things so you can really get me to help you really see the big picture, okay?
Winkler was the president of the American Association of Planned Parenthood Physicians and a member of the board of directors of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Like many of those in the eugenics movement, he understood that their plans would not always be voluntarily adopted, and that the use of governmental coercion or even force might one day be necessary.
The idea of forced eugenics was not something that suddenly developed in the 1970s. In a 1929 speech, American eugenicist Samuel Holmes had proposed that mandatory birth control should be used as a tool to eliminate what he called the menace to the white race that had been created by increases in black population. His solution was to have a quota system in which the right to have a child would be controlled by the government and determined by race. At the time, Holmes was on the National Council of the American Birth Control League, which would later become known as Planned Parenthood.
I want to add that the whole problem is not that black people are breeding too fast. No one should have the right to come on earth and try to say who has a right to populate. You know, I mean, it's not our problem that you guys are declining in numbers, and the way to combat that, you think, well, since we're not reproducing as fast as everybody else, then the population of the world is overcrowded. No, that's not true. The problem is that the universe is pretty much getting rid of you guys, like I've already said to you, and that's not being mean, it's just the truth. So when the universe takes the male of a certain species reproductive power away from him, that is a universally ordained thing, principle. You can't change that. I don't care how many black men you kill because you're not reproducing, you're still going to end up not on the earth. But your problem is you want other black people to sustain your whiteness by convincing them to keep eradicating their melanin and making themselves more and more white. And the more they do that, it's sickly, and plus you make yourself sick by doing that. And plus you keep a sick virus alive on the earth that only wants to keep perpetuation of the destruction of the melanated people that the earth designed. I mean, that's ridiculous. This is some psychotic shit.
Then, in 1936, eugenicist Julian Huxley proposed that the genetically inferior classes could be made to have fewer children if they were denied easy access to welfare. Another part of this proposal was that medical care to these same people should be restricted in order to reduce the survival rates of the children they did have. He also called for the forced sterilization of anyone who was unemployed beyond a certain length of time.
See, this is the reason why I be trying my best to convince the black people, the melanated people of this planet, how important it is for us all to do everything we can to get away from this type of control of our lives. Eventually, they're going to murder all of us. You know, I mean, there's no sense in you trying to overlook that. You can sit your ass up in that church trying to worship Jesus all you want to, and the only thing you're going to do is make yourself easily found when it's time for the motherfucker to cut your head off. When he come to cut your head off, they probably going to get a bunch of y'all in church on Sunday and just poison y'all dumbasses while you sitting in there.
Huxley was later honored by Planned Parenthood and was a featured speaker at one of their annual conventions.
The reality is that the views of people like Samuel Holmes and Julian Huxley were never uncommon within the American eugenics community. In 1969, a professor at the University of California, Dr. Garrett Hardin, called it insanity to rely on voluntarism to control population. Hardin was a member of the American Eugenics Society and an outspoken advocate of government-enforced birth control, saying that citizens should be willing to give up their right to breed for the betterment of society. In 1980, he was given Planned Parenthood's highest national award. He and his wife would later kill themselves in a joint suicide pact.
There were, of course, some within the eugenics movement who were uncomfortable with the idea of using force, and they would often express their reservations about it in public. But when pressed, virtually none of them would rule it out, including Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger.
I consider that the world, and almost our civilization for the next 25 years, is going to depend upon a simple, cheap, safe contraceptive to be used in poverty-stricken slums, jungles, and among the most ignorant people. Even this will not be sufficient, because I believe that now, immediately, there should be national sterilization for certain dysgenic types of our population who are being encouraged to breed and would die out were the government not feeding them.
See, here's the deal. The real reality of what she just said had been anticipated by our universal creator, and so that's just what he did. He took the ability to reproduce away from them. Okay, and so now the only people that's parasitic and breeding and taking advantage of the government is them, because as you can see, the government takes everything from everyone, and they're definitely not giving shit to the black people. So they need to stop with all the bullshit about somebody living off the government. The government pimped our asses as slaves for 500 years. So stop the bullshit. See things for the truth matter of it, and stop sitting around here trying to deny the fact that we have been very victimized by this whole nationality of people, and this nationality of people owe us reparation for all the bullshit we have been through. And that's the reason why it's raining so much, because the universe knows that everything I'm saying is coming out of my mouth because I've been instructed by the universe to say it. And so you guys better wake up. You owe for what you have done to us. And you can thank this bitch right here, Margaret Sanger, for screwing your head up and making you all go along with this crazy ass shit.
Margaret Sanger, 1950.
This was written by Sanger in a personal letter to Catherine Dexter McCormick. McCormick was an heir to the international harvester fortune and would later use part of her immense wealth to fund the development of the birth control pill.
In 1966, an example of the coercive power of state eugenics laws was seen in Maryland when 3 young mothers applied for welfare benefits. All 3 were arrested for child neglect, even though the authorities never claimed to have any evidence of abuse or neglect. Instead, the women were held under a state law which stated that simply being unmarried and pregnant was child neglect. The judge in this case warned the women that if they ever became pregnant again, the state would take custody of all their children. Officials in Prince George's County, where the arrest took place, stated that welfare recipients could avoid being prosecuted under this law by submitting to state-sponsored birth control education.
In 1934, Adolf Hitler sent a letter to American eugenicist Leon Whitney, complimenting him for a book he had written on sterilization. Whitney was the former executive secretary of the American Eugenics Society and a colleague of Margaret Sanger's. Sanger also published his writings in the Birth Control Review.
In the book that Hitler was praising, Whitney had written that America could eliminate what he called the slum elements of society by sterilizing the lowest 25% of its population. He claimed this was necessary because such people are too stupid to understand or practice even simple methods of contraception. Besides, he said, the country would hardly miss them.
I want you guys to know something. All this literature right here is the reason why a lot of people on this earth has the messed up minds that they have, because their parents keep passing this type of stuff down to the children. And this has really angered the universe. I mean, the universe see the filth of the minds of people. That's really the truth. The universe knows the filthy planning and all the stuff that has already been written down, and people are trying, and we're getting ready to do some horrible shit, but those UFOs showed up and put a stop to all that, and you don't know how happy you are that they did. But the thing is that the ideas and the concepts of that are still around, and so the universe has to do some serious cleaning so the people of the earth won't be victimized by this scum that is trying to call the good people scum. So it's getting ready to go down, and I know you're tired of me saying that, but I'm trying to warn everybody how important it is for you to fix your karma behind people like these people right here that's getting exposed to you. Behind their rhetoric, everyone has allowed their minds to become very, very polluted with crap that is causing a lot of people to have to pay some serious, serious suffering for the bad conceptualizations that they have about people on the earth and about God and everything else. So I'm just pointing that out to you. That's all I'm doing. And I'll tell you, I was sent here to do that, and that's why I'm doing it.
Who he was talking about was named Elaine Riddick.
At the age of 13, I became pregnant. I was raped by a guy that lived across the street from me. He snatched me off the street and molested me and threatened my life and said if I ever told anyone that he would kill me. When they was delivering my son, they sterilized me at the same time. They had approached my grandmother and said that if she wanted to continue to receive supplement, welfare and food stamps, or at this time it was giving out these surplus foods, canned cheese, I think it was, powdered eggs, and said that if she did not sign the X, that they were going to stop her supplements. Mind you, my grandmother was illiterate. She had never ever gone to school. She didn't understand what it was. So she signed the X, and they did this to me. I did not find out that they had sterilized me until I was 19 years old. I asked the state of North Carolina why they did this to me, and they said that because I was feeble-minded, that I would not be able to take care of myself, I would not be able to tie my shoes, that I was just incompetent. The state of North Carolina also said that I had never performed, at the age of 13, I had never performed a day's work in my life. They couldn't get me to do anything. But at the age of 13, I mean, should I not have been in school? They were saying that feeble-mindedness is hereditary. So they sterilized me so I would not produce my kind.
Okay, I want to tell you what I mean about what they did to the black women to mess their brains up. Now, imagine this woman growing up the rest of her life as a woman that has been sterilized and her ability to reproduce taken away from her like that without her consent, without her even knowing. Think about how traumatic that must have been by the time she wanted to get married to a man and found out that she could no longer conceive, okay? This type of damage mentally to the black woman is what has been utilized by the European people to cause a state of stagnant existence amongst us melanated people. See, this woman right here could have been a great mother. You could see her intelligence, and she could have produced a great child who could be a deliverer for us as a people from our oppression. The white man knows this, and he targets our black women. He treats them like this and then turn around and tell them, I'm going to give you the supplements so you can survive. So the black woman now, I'm watching the black man being no defense to himself, has to bow down to the black man, to the white man, and accept him as her provider. And that's why she worships him as God, because she sees him as her provider. She doesn't see the universe as bringing sustainment to the earth, and she cannot accept her woman goddess quality as bringing sustainment to the earth when you got people around like these white men that's sterilizing them and cutting their uteruses off, or forcing them to take birth control pills, or taking their sons, locking them up in prison, raping their daughters, teaching everybody to be worshipers of themselves, looking at the image of the white man as their God. Do you understand? The brainwash of the white man is what has destroyed the beauty and the peace of this planet and made everybody become the tarnished, victimized people like this lady you see right here on this television. And like the many people that's in the prisons right now, and the many girls that's out there selling their bodies so they can get another hit of crack or crank or alcohol or heroin and all of these bad vices that he allowed to be a part of our everyday society. So the decadence that is on this earth, because not only does he perpetuate it, is through